year, one of the things that the coalition did is it looked at 8 different locations around the community. And they said, okay, based on these criteria, after getting feedback from some of the artists in the community who gave us some very excellent approaches to, or some very excellent comments to this, we then said, okay, you got to define where's it going to be. And based on these criteria, members of the coalition then identified 8 different locations that were evaluated. In February and in March, those locations were then reviewed and one by one either identified as they ought to stay in the consideration or not. And there were 2 finalists that were identified. One was in Heber, and it was north of where, I'll just be very transparent, it was north of where the Smith's new center is going to be, and there's kind of a drive, I guess it's a bypass road, and the other one was south of Memorial Hill. Now, we then the coalition did spend a fair amount of time saying, okay, is there a plan for having community amenities and shopping restaurants and hangout places, again, my grandkids' vernacular, that would be available for this to occur? And based on that, the decision was made by the coalition that the location of choice is south of Memorial Hill. Now, I'll turn that over to the city.
Yeah, thanks, David. Oh, Mayor, would you like to say anything?
You're good.
Okay,
You want the pointer?
I've got a pointer up here. So as a city, we have been working, starting the first part of last year, we started working on revising our general plan. And one thing that we decided as we went through our economic development, that we had one area along Main Street just south of Memorial Hill that hasn't been developed. It's a couple of open fields. And we received a couple of proposals over the past couple of years that made us think that if we really don't form the code to something that we want to see on that property, we'll just get any type of commercial development. We had a couple of proposals for some mixed use, but mostly storage units, to be honest with you. And so we went through and revised our code to take that out of the code. But then we decided if we really want to plan and not be reactionary, we better change our code. And so the idea is that we're looking at potentially adopting a new code. It's a mixed-use code. It's a performance-based code, so if the developer does certain items, then as a city we'll give back and allow them to do certain things such as increase height or something along those lines that will allow them to do a different type of development. But that really works well with this performing arts center. As we've looked at the different locations, where this could possibly be, this location fits all of those criteria of having good access. We would have a mixed-use area, and it would really become a gathering center for the community. And so those are kind of the goals that we've had as we've gone through this process, is really creating this type of scenario. I'm going to go back a couple of slides. And if you can all imagine, just south of Memorial Hill, there's a couple of fields. That's really what we're talking about. The idea is to really create kind of a village concept with kind of a central plaza, where there'd be a gathering area for the community. There'd be some boutiques and also restaurants that surround the area, but also one of the main anchors would be this performing arts center. We just have a couple of visuals. They're kind of difficult to see on this, but this is looking from above at kind of that central plaza area. And just to the north, here would be that performing arts center. Well, I shouldn't say just performing arts, it'd be an arts center because there'd be visual arts also included in that.
On that one, point out where Memorial Hill is on.
Yeah, that would be back in this area here. Yeah, just to the north.
You have another visual of that, don't you?
Yeah, I've got a couple of different visuals here, and so this is kind of looking in the plaza, and this is just kind of an architectural rendition of what could possibly be located on the site. And then the idea is to have, again, this mixed-use center, but also create this arts center that could include even an amphitheater on the site. And again, these are difficult to see on the slideshow. But we already have architectural elements that are in our code that we want to adapt to this location. So the idea is to create that quaint village-type feel that you'd have in Europe. But again, this would be a perfect location for this type of facility, and so we're working to try to make that happen. Mayor, do you have any comments you'd like to make also?
No, I just appreciate the time that the coalition has put into this, and that Michael and our planning commission and city council have worked on trying to help create this so that it can be a workable development. And like Michael said, if we don't do something, we're just going to get anything. And I don't think we want that anywhere in the valley. I think that we need, we need to do this. And I realized that, at the end of the result that it was in Midway, but something that I think is really important to remember is that from that location to Heber's Main Street's like less than 3 miles. And we're all part of a county, and we're these small little entities, and I think we have to work together to make things like this happen. There's never going to be enough money to generate this, 2 or 3 of these in our area, in our valley, and so to be able to have a nice performing arts center with all of the arts groups we have working together and being able to be under one roof, I think is a great idea. I think gathering plazas might be able to work in, more than one area, but I think for this performing arts center, you've got the acoustics of the Memorial Hill. There's a lot of advantages there of why I think that location was chosen. So.
And now you have the entire state looking at you. Congratulations on getting voted as the #1
oh, yeah.
small town.
#1 small town. Yeah, that's right. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah. Two-edged sword.
It is.
Yeah.
So, we're good. David, did you have anything else?
Yeah, so we're going through a process right now. We've actually started this the end of last year of getting public comment and going through a public hearing process to see if we want to adopt this type of a code. It is already zoned commercial, and so this isn't a huge change from that already. But again, we're gathering comment at the moment to see where we get with it.
The other thing in terms of transparency, it's really important that this also fit with whoever wants to develop the village. And there are several developers who have been participating on our coalition and who are going to continue to participate in doing something with venture capitalists who could actually fund the village concept that we're talking about. But before we go into that detail, I'm going to ask Ryan if he'll take just a few minutes and talk a little bit about the economic impact, positive impact of this on the entire valley. So let me turn the time over to you, and I think you've got a slide or two up here. You can cue those, Michael, the slides on economic development.
Well, good evening. Just want to commend David for his leadership. Throughout this process, he's been very collaborative, and he's a very process-driven guy, and I think it's helped us answer a lot of questions, so we appreciate you.
Hey, Ryan, can you move over by the microphone so you can...
What was that?
I wonder if we ought to have the microphone up there.
That's fine.
I'm okay. I feel like I should be singing. I'm not going to. So, David asked me, you're welcome. Believe me, you are welcome. So, David asked me to prepare just a slide or two to discuss some of the potential economic impact of some type of facility like this. Now, this isn't an exact science, but I'll walk you through some of the assumptions that I made. So as you see here behind me, if we were to assume that this facility would accommodate roughly 250 events per year, which is kind of actually a conservative number according to what some of the coalition has suggested, they say that perhaps we could even do more. They've also said that they feel that any given event can attract between 300 and 400 people. So we kind of erred on the conservative side and said, well, what if we had 250 visitors per event? Now, some events we're going to get 100. Other events we're going to get 1,000 or 1,500. So, happy medium is 250. What if, and again, I think this is a low number, but what if 10% of those people stayed in one of our hotels? And if we assume that the hotel cost is $130 per night, then we can make some certain calculations and guesses. Okay. On the next slide, don't go there quite yet, but on the next slide you'll see some data that we came up with. So in 2010, we commissioned, our office, the Tourism and Economic Development Office, commissioned a research study to help us understand who's coming to the Heber Valley, how long are they staying, how much money are they spending, etc. Now again, this is 2010, so we know it's 6 or 7 years old, and this is also during the Great Recession. So I think we have reason to feel optimistic that the numbers are quite low. but we're plugging them in just as an assumption, so you'll see those in a minute. So this data shows what an overnight visitor would spend as they come to the valley. Now we know that 90%, according to this assumption, of the visitors are not going to stay overnight. So we're making an assumption that they spend 50% or half as much as the overnight visitor. Okay. And that data from the Lighthouse Research Report shows that overnight visitors spend $58 per person in retail, in addition to the hotel, and another $64.20 in other expenditures. Now that could be gas, or, you know, all sorts of things. So if we go to the next slide, hopefully this isn't too complicated. So this just kind of takes what I've described and puts it into a table. So if we look in this first column, I'm going to come over here and I'll speak loudly. So overnight visitors, okay, 250.
Here you go.
Yeah. Thanks. If we look at here, overnight, let's see, event days, 250. Average event attendance, 250. Number of attendees. So if we were to take 250 event days times this number, we would have a total of 62,500 visitors on any given year. Okay, now we assume that 10% of this number will actually stay in a hotel. Okay, now we're assuming that the hotel is going to be about $130. So as we multiply that out, that turns into $812,000 in just hotel revenues for the Beaver Valley. So then our transit room tax, 4.25% from this 812, generates about $34,000 for Wasatch County's TRT. So now, according to those numbers that I cited earlier from the research report, $58 per person in retail spending is kind of what we expect. Now, by the way, these numbers are only current for the 10% of the people staying overnight. Okay. That same person will likely spend $36.20 in dining and about $28 in other, for a total non-hotel spend of about $122 per person. So per year, as we times that out, we're looking at upwards of $800,000, just shy of it. Okay, total hotel and non-hotel spend, so this is the cost of the lodging and the cost of dining and retail. We're looking at $1.5 million per year in revenues, just from this 10% of visitors staying. Now, I just did a little formula, and this may be rough, but according to the 5.95% sales tax rate charged in Wasatch County, that would generate another $45,000 in sales tax. Again, just from the 10%. So what about the 90%? What about us? We go to an event. Likely, we're not going to stay the night at the Homestead or the Zermont or, you know, the Best Western as it comes. We're probably going to go home. But while we're out, and as this becomes an anchor where we have retail and shopping and boutiques, chances are we're going to say, honey, let's go to dinner. Let's stop by this boutique. Let's buy some fudge. Let's spend a little bit of money on our date night. Okay, so the number of attendees doesn't change. The number of overnight stays. Okay, let's see, is that right? Am I looking at the right? Okay, so the hotel cost is zero. Revenues from this 90% is zero. Total transit room tax from us, of course, is going to be zero. But now we're taking what the visitor would spend on average in retail, and we'll just divide that by, you know, cut it in half. So $29, $18 that we might spend on dining, another 61 on other non-hotel spend. And so in total, this is what we would spend. Okay, that number doesn't change because we're not including the hotel there. And so total sales tax collected in Wasatch County, just from the other 90%, we think could be roughly another $204,000. Now again, a lot of these are assumptions. It's not an exact science, but you know, numbers can be manipulated a little bit. So as we look at the total for the county, as we add up transit room tax and sales tax, could be close to $300,000 per year. And so we think that this could be a real economic development driver. It can be a great thing, not only for Midway City, but for Wasatch County. As we've worked through this process, feel like we can truly be a destination for the arts, and that many of our citizens are asking for that gathering place. You know, as much as I love to go to Walmart on Friday night, I'd love to go somewhere else. So, any questions?
How does this compare to like the Eccles Center in Park City?
I haven't analyzed their numbers in the slightest, Mike, just to be totally forthright, but I think maybe this committee could answer better than I could.
Yeah. One of the things.
I mean, I looked at the sales tax number, and Wasatch County only gets $1 million of total sales tax per year right now. To say that one venue can up that 5 times is, I'm not sure I can buy into that.
Yeah. Well, that's according to the numbers that I plugged in, and like I said, it's not a science. I do think, though, we're not just talking about one facility. We're talking about potentially a movie theater, restaurants, retail.
Okay, I want to just take a few more minutes if I can and then wrap this up. Thank you very much, Brian. If you can go to the slide that looks like this. We didn't practice before, so, you know, here we are. One of the things that I wanted to do is, I believe all of the cities, or all of the, excuse me, oh, look at that, I can do that. All of the councils that we went to, we kind of shared the process when you're building a facility. And those of you that have built a home or you've been involved in construction, you generally start with some kind of a planning of saying, hey, I want to have 5 bedrooms, or I want to have 4 bedrooms, or I want to have whatever. So you've seen what the Arts Center has talked about, or what the commission, or the coalition has come up with. But after that, then you have to get somebody involved in drawing it up and saying, okay, this is how many, this is what the assumption is. Here, what does this look like? What's next to what? And what are the outcomes if I put the stairway this way or someplace else? So the stacking diagram, the block diagram, is what is part of the schematic design. And when you get to that point, then you say, okay, well, let's look at the cost of the furnishings, the fixtures, and the equipment, and then say, all in, can we afford that? But until you've actually gone into this schematic design, you're really not successful in identifying what you can or can't do. So what our next step is, and what I'm seeking your endorsement in, endorsement to proceed with, is we've actually contacted Randon Wilson, who's a member of our coalition, contacted for us 3 very significant architectural firms that have done art centers or performing arts centers nationally. One of them is HKS. HKS happens to be an international firm and helped assist in 2 hospitals that I was involved in building in my career, not in this state. I was shocked that they were so interested. I wasn't shocked, but I was very flattered that they were interested. Another one is FFKR, and a third one is Prescott Muir. So if you're familiar with some of the work that has been done throughout the state, these are very prestigious organizations. On the 23rd of March, all 3 of them came, and we spent an hour and a half with each one of them, talked with them about the goals that we were talking about, what we were trying to achieve, and then took them on a tour of Memorial Hill. They took pictures, and they said, we're in. We'd like to come back and tell you what it would cost us to do the schematic design, and what, in fact, our conceptual idea of where this should be in this area around Memorial Hill. And on the 18th of April, that would be 1 week from tonight, I'm inviting all of the council members to join us in the community room at the New Justice Center, 301 South Main, I have it memorized. And they're going to be coming and making a presentation, each of the 3. We're going to give each of them 45 minutes. And along with the coalition, we're inviting members of the city councils as well as the county council members who are interested in joining us. And what they're going to do is tell us what it looks like, what it would cost, and then we want to come back to the various organizations and say, okay, here's what we think the burn rate would be. We're also, assuming that we get your endorsement, we're going to then start, after this meeting has been held and we see what their design looks like and the one that we want to select, we then are going to start our philanthropy. And there are several very, very significant foundations that have approached us that are interested in participating in this. And so we're going to start that. We have to have something from a visual standpoint that they can see. Okay, and this will be kind of the last slide. You go to the next slide. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. This is it. So what we have done thus far, as far as the coalition, is in September and November, we enlisted community support, outlined the process, we identified, and you've seen this, what the high-level outcomes would be. We've defined potential locations, and then we finalized the location, which you've seen represented tonight. And tonight we're seeking the endorsement of both the location and proceeding to get the schematic design results from these three architectural firms. Our goal then, after we get into schematic design, and we make that decision by May, the first week in May, then what we would want to do is we've got a business team that would be, in addition to working with the architects, focused on coming up with the schematic design, and the schematic design would then run through May through, we'd start in May through June, but the actual conducting with end users, that means the artists who perform would say, okay, here's what we really need to have as far as offstage, here's what we need to have as far as arts programs. That's in fact what would happen between June and September of this year, and then we would come back with, okay, here's what it's going to cost, and we would also say, here is the philanthropy support that we have. So, the last slide. So, what questions do you have of me or the members of the coalition? Because I then want to ask you for your support. Are you okay?
Sorry, I'm on the council, but we had a meeting.
Okay, great, great, come on in.
Sorry. So I'm just questioning the 250 events. Like, are those new events, not things that we're already having that they would be
No,
held
those would
there?
be what we're already having, plus others that we don't have now.
So if we're already having some of these events and they're going to be held there, how can we consider those as the economic impact, because we already have those people that are here? And
You want to respond to that?
Yeah, so maybe this isn't new revenue, so this was me today saying, David, give me a number, how many events you think? And he said, oh, roughly 250, so I think that can go down.
So some of them might be things that people are having at the TBT or at the high school.
They may be, but this might also be the venue where these organizations would want, because of the limit to capacity. The limit to growth is always capacity.
Right.
If you don't have capacity, you can't grow. And so if there are venues right now that are programs that are being presented that would have capacity for more audience participation, but there's not enough room in the box, then this would be a place that they could utilize. The second thing I would respond to is these were 2010 estimates. I think we're in 2017. I mean, I know we are, I'm being sarcastic.
I'm pretty sure you're right.
So I don't know what they are now.
Do you know what, like, can you give me some examples of what some of those events might be?
Some of the events would be Cowboy Poetry is very interested. There's this little theater group that gets together, and I believe there's an actor that's associated with it. I think it's called Robert Redford. Yeah, you've heard of them. Well, I'm being a little bit sarcastic or a little flippant, but there's a great interest in having some additional venues and things like that that could be happening. Cowboy Poetry is big. There are several others. And in fact, one of the things we've also heard from coalition members is that the Zermatt and the Homestead, which actually have the second largest number of rooms in the entire state, I was blown away, outside of Little America, they have various group meetings that they would like to have where they'd like to have people come in and be speakers and present. And they said, we would provide a shuttle back and forth. This would be wonderful, because when people come and stay at the Zermatt, where do they go? They go to Park City. And where does the revenue go? It goes to Park City. So.
Is the feedback from other theater groups in the valley?
Very positive.
They're looking forward to more space.
Absolutely. But this isn't like free space, you know, it's something that would have to be economically developed, and there would be some associated cost with that, but there is that cost now. So, anyway, yes.
Has there been any impact studies done on this facility as it such as a traffic study of what these events are going to do to Midway City. And then, you know, the intersections at Main Street and River Road's going to have a stoplight there. You're going to need another stoplight at Center Street and Main Street. You're going to need traffic mitigation throughout the county because we already have times where it's very, very backed up. So I think that as a citizen of this community, I would like to see a traffic study on what kind of impacts this is going to cause on taxpayers in Midway of how we're going to mitigate some of this traffic.
Well, as a taxpayer in Midway, and having moved here from another community, I moved here because it was rural. I used to live in rural Oklahoma, and I came here for that purpose. I was also participating in the transportation study, and I understand what you're saying. I also understand, because I go occasionally into Heber and occasionally into Provo, that it's a challenge in that location. And I was very pleased when the city was talking about what the city is going to do. But to answer your questions, has the coalition done that? That's beyond our pay grade, because we're all volunteers, number one. Number two, that would have to be done in conjunction with what we're talking about as far as restaurants and this whole community development. But I can tell you from the standpoint of revenue, if we don't do something in a location that's centralized, and if you've ever been to Leavenworth, Washington, or you've been to Solvang, California, or you've been to a number of other places where I've lived in my lifetime, if we don't do something like this in a consolidated area, then we're apt to have things going all over, and it's going to look really bad. So I, for one, am very interested in providing some kind of a revenue base, not just for this city, but for the county, which will mitigate having the potholes not being able to be repaired because we don't have the revenue. And number two, I'm also concerned that in 2020, when the next census is held, that the city of Midway, and I'm talking just about the city of Midway, is going to lose $425,000 in revenue. And if we don't come up with another revenue source, then that means potholes are going to continue, or your property taxes are going to go up.
Or you can change the law at the state. That was also a
Beyond my
option on Facebook when this was being discussed on Facebook. No, I'm saying that there is a law at the state that says it's going to happen and you're going to have to pay for your own. Right.
But my point is, and again, nothing is perfect. But I can tell you where there is no vision, the people perish, number one. And number two, the stars are now lined up. The city is saying they'd like to do something to preserve the historic nature of Midway and to not have things going all over, but have it in this one area. There are developers who are interested, and if the box that we're talking about, the art center, isn't in an area that's adjacent to a place that people hang out, it ain't gonna work. So if the stars are aligned, we either take advantage of the stars, or if we don't think big, then we ought to go home. So I'm seeking your endorsement tonight. Thank you very much.
What time is the meeting next Tuesday?
The meeting is from 6 until 9 p.m. And I'm not making it open to the community because the room is not big enough. So I'm making it available to the coalition members and to the council members. I can accommodate about 50 people. But we will actually, after that, because then we get approval or we don't get approval for the schematic design, then we'll open it up to the public. But I'm really anxious because I'm concerned that the public is worrying about this, and so I'm hopeful that there's going to be some appropriate and accurate information going out very soon about what the coalition has been doing and what this is going to mean for the